I have always been drawn to the mysterious and the supernatural. It's a fascination that has led me down dark and winding paths, but none so chilling as the one I ventured onto in the remote village of Urami, nestled deep within the Aokigura forest. It was a place that few dared to visit, for it was said to be cursed by the spirits of the Yurei, vengeful souls of the dead. My obsession with the Yurei began with an old, weathered book I discovered in a dusty corner of a Tokyo bookstore. The pages were filled with eerie tales of the spirits, but one legend in particular had captured my imagination: the story of Ochimusha, the vengeful samurai. Urami was a place of isolation, with dense trees and a thick canopy that swallowed the daylight. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, warning outsiders like me to stay away. But my curiosity was insatiable, and I felt compelled to uncover the truth behind Ochimusha's story. I arrived in the village late one evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the eerie landscape. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. An old woman, her eyes clouded with age, watched me from her porch as I passed by. "You shouldn't be here," she croaked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Ignoring her warning, I pressed on deeper into the village. The houses were dark, and the only sound was the wind rustling through the leaves. I finally reached the village inn, a ramshackle building that seemed to be the only source of life in the desolate place. The innkeeper, a middle-aged man with a solemn demeanor, greeted me with a nod. "You're the one they call the Yurei Seeker, aren't you?" I nodded in affirmation, feeling a strange sense of recognition in his eyes. "Very well," he said, leading me to a dimly lit room at the back of the inn. "I have a story for you, but it comes at a price." I didn't hesitate to agree, and he began to speak of Ochimusha. Long ago, Ochimusha was a revered samurai who served a noble lord in these very lands. He was known for his unwavering loyalty and his skill with a katana, but his fate took a dark turn when a rival clan framed him for a crime he did not commit. Disgraced and betrayed, Ochimusha was sentenced to death. Legend has it, the innkeeper continued, that before his execution, Ochimusha cursed those who wronged him, swearing vengeance from beyond the grave. His hatred and anguish were so strong that they bound his soul to the Aokigura forest, transforming him into a Yurei of immense power. As the innkeeper spoke, the room seemed to grow colder, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Many have ventured into the forest in search of Ochimusha," he whispered, "but none have returned. They say he guards a hidden tomb deep within the woods, and those who stumble upon it meet a gruesome end." I was undeterred by the chilling tale, my obsession pushing me forward. I asked the innkeeper for directions to the forest's edge. He reluctantly obliged, handing me a small talisman carved from bone. "Take this," he said. "It may offer you some protection, but remember, the Yurei are not to be trifled with." With the talisman in hand, I ventured into the Aokigura forest, the darkness closing in around me like a suffocating shroud. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, and I could hear faint, mournful cries in the distance. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and excitement. Hours turned into days as I trekked deeper into the forest, my path marked only by the occasional rustling of leaves and eerie shadows that danced at the edge of my vision. I felt as though I had stepped into another world, one where the living and the dead existed side by side. My journey led me to a clearing bathed in an eerie, pale light. At its center stood a weathered stone torii gate, covered in moss and vines. It marked the entrance to a hidden shrine, and I knew I had found the place I had been seeking. As I approached the torii gate, a bone-chilling wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the lantern I carried. I was enveloped in darkness, and a feeling of dread washed over me. I could sense a presence nearby, a malevolent force that seemed to emanate from the very earth beneath my feet. Summoning all my courage, I stepped through the gate and into the shrine. It was a small, decrepit building with a roof that sagged under the weight of time. Inside, I found an ancient altar, upon which rested a tarnished katana. It was said to be the very blade Ochimusha had wielded in life. As I gazed upon the sword, a voice echoed through the chamber, a haunting whisper that seemed to come from all directions. Who dares to intrude upon my resting place? I turned to see a spectral figure materializing before me. It was Ochimusha himself, his samurai armor tattered and his eyes burning with a fiery, otherworldly rage. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling as I replied, I seek to learn the truth of your curse and to understand the pain that binds you. Okamusha's laughter was a hollow, chilling sound. You are a fool, mortal. There is no escape from the curse that binds me, and none who enter this shrine leave alive. With that, he raised his katana and advanced toward me, his ghostly form shimmering with deadly intent. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, and in desperation, I clutched the bone talisman the innkeeper had given me. To my astonishment, the talisman began to emit a faint, ethereal light, forming a protective barrier between me and the vengeful samurai. Okamusha's strikes were repelled by the barrier, and he howled in frustration. But even as I held him at bay, I could see the torment in his eyes. It was a pain that transcended death itself, a torment that had consumed him for centuries. In that moment, I understood that Ochimusha was not just a malevolent spirit seeking vengeance. He was a soul trapped in an endless cycle of suffering. Tears welled in my eyes as I spoke, my voice filled with empathy. I don't seek to harm you, Ochimusha. I seek to free you from this curse, to break the cycle of hatred and despair. Ochimusha hesitated, his katana lowering slightly. You speak of freeing me, but how can it be done? I explained my plan, one that involved uncovering the truth of his wrongful conviction and clearing his name. It would be a long and arduous journey, but it was the only way to release him from his torment. As Ochimusha considered my proposal, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his decision. Finally, he nodded, his spectral form fading slightly. Very well, mortal. I will grant you my cooperation, but you must promise to honor your word. I gave my solemn oath, and with that, Okamusha's vengeful presence began to wane. The shrine grew quiet, and the oppressive darkness lifted. Over the months that followed, I delved deep into the history of the rival clans, piecing together the events that had led to Okamusha's false accusation. It was a painstaking process, but with each revelation, I drew closer to the truth. I returned to Urami and sought out the innkeeper who had grown older and frailer in my absence. I shared my findings with him, and he confirmed the accuracy of my research. Together, we approached the rival clan, now a shadow of its former self, and presented our evidence. The truth could not be denied, and Okamusha's name was finally cleared of the false accusations that had haunted him for centuries. As the curse was lifted, I returned to the Aokigahara forest, to the shrine where I had first encountered Ochimusha. The torii gate stood tall and proud, bathed in the gentle light of the setting sun. I felt a presence beside me, and when I turned, I saw Ochimusha one final time. His form was no longer twisted with rage and suffering. Instead, he appeared at peace. You have fulfilled your promise, mortal, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. I am free. With those words, Okamusha's spirit dissolved into a shimmering mist, vanishing into the forest that had held him captive for so long. The oppressive darkness that had once hung over the Aokigahara forest lifted, and it seemed as though the very trees whispered their gratitude. I left the forest that day, my heart heavy with the weight of the experience. I had ventured into a realm of darkness and despair, but in the end, I had found redemption for a tormented soul. It was a journey that had changed me forever, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is hope for redemption and release from the curses that bind us.